How's it going, everyone? This is Trixx from MoS Smash, and in this video we're going to be talking about how to use and practice Peach's float mechanics. So pretty much at this point in the meta, everybody knows that if you full hop and then hold the jump button, you'll start to float. And this is a very basic and primitive way to start the animation. But if you've watched a top level Peach main like Samsora, then you know that floats and float cancelling is much more complex than this. But let's start off with the basics. If you've ever wondered how a Peach main initiates float right off the ground, it is simply by holding down on the control stick and then pressing jump. You can actually interrupt your jump animation by pressing down on the control stick at different timings to allow you to have different heights at which you float. And quickly before we go any further, I just want to point out that I have my Z button mapped to jump. There's a reason for that, but we're going to get into that later on. You may have also noticed during this demonstration that I have the ability to do a RAR float, which is to run in a direction, turn around, and then start floating immediately. This can be great for doing a retreating RAR fair to wall out an aggressive opponent, or if you'd like to, you can do a RAR bear to approach with a back air. Since Peach has the ability to manually manipulate her float height, you can actually place her so that she's out of reach of any standing grab in the game, but still has the ability to attack from the air. But you have to be careful with this because Peach does not have the ability to air dodge or double jump while floating. The only way to do it is to release the jump button and then you can move freely. Peach also has the ability to float by holding up on the control stick, and this is most useful for edge guarding or ledge trapping and is easily done so by running off of a platform or the ledge of the stage. You're going to want to be careful though to not drift too quickly forwards or backwards, because if you press the control stick all the way left or all the way right, Peach's float will be cancelled. So earlier I mentioned that I have my Z button mapped to jump. The reason for this is that if I have a face button mapped to jump, then I won't be able to use the C stick to input my aerials. If you use the A button plus a directional input to perform your aerials, your movement will always be influenced at the same time, making it very difficult to do an aerial while floating in place. And so for this reason, we want to use the C stick coupled with a shoulder button. I personally use the Z button, but L and R both also work just fine. By using the C stick for your aerials, you'll be able to move around freely in the air, and you'll be able to use any aerial you like without heavily influencing your drift. This is one of the best ways to safely poke and attack on shield, since you have the ability to drift in and out of your opponent's zone and throw out a hitbox in their direction. Next, let's take a look at float cancel combos. If you press and release the Z button while holding down on the control stick, you can very quickly initiate a float and then cancel it back to the ground over and over again. Also notice that you can move around in space by lightly rolling the control stick in the direction that you want to go. Next, we're going to be talking about adding in aerials to actually turn this into a combo. For the brief moment that you are floating, you can input an aerial with the C stick and then cancel it by returning to the ground. This allows Peach to throw out multiple different attacks very quickly with minimal end lag. This is fantastic for comboing, but it can also be used to poke while ledge trapping and also sharp platforms. A really good exercise you can try just to try and get these inputs down is doing a RAR float cancelled back air into eventual poke. This one exercise will cover every technique that we've talked about thus far. I also wanted to mention that of course you cannot input a nair using the C stick, but rather you have to use the A button. I found the timing with the shoulder button as jump to be a bit difficult, so instead I prefer to use Y button. You can very easily roll your thumb from Y to A or X to A to initiate a float cancelled nair. Next, let's talk about adding hit stun into our combos, because once you do, the timing for everything changes. You'll notice that by doing combos with hit stun, that your float cancelled attacks timing is drastically different. So it's definitely useful to practice your timing for float cancelled pokes as well as float cancelled combos. One of the best ways to do this is to take your opponent and put them on the far left side of the practice stage in the corner against the wall. Once you're there, you're going to want to turn stale moves off and turn on fixed damage. The reason for fixed damage is because you don't want your opponent to fly farther and farther away while you're trying to practice the timing of these inputs. And lastly, as a side note, I found this a lot easier to do with rumble on, but that's just a personal preference. And lastly, let's talk about floating with a turnip in hand. As long as you are holding jump to float, Peach will not throw the turnip. This means that you'll have access to all of your aerials and you don't have to worry about doing a Z drop aerial catch. And lastly, if you do want to throw the turnip, just release jump and stop floating. Also, once you've stopped floating, you have the ability to throw the turnip with either the A button or the C stick. Now knowing that we don't have to do Z drop aerials to actually perform something that looks like this, it makes it much more simple. This just happened to happen while I was recording, so I figured I'd still show it. If you have a bomb in hand and you throw it at the ground, Peach will not take any damage. Kinda just a fun fact, but it still is good to know. And with that, we've pretty much covered everything you need to know about Peach's float mechanic. In the future, I'm going to be releasing a couple videos on how to combo using Peach's float, but these combos are much too complex to just throw at the end of a video like this. So with that being said, be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can keep up with all future updates. Also be sure to follow us on all major social media platforms, as there is a lot of unique content that is not shared on the YouTube channel. And lastly, this is Trixx from MoS Smash saying thanks for watching the video.